The marble floors of Whitmore Academy had never seen such chaos. It was 3:47 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon in October when the entire board of directors, 300 parents, and half the teaching staff sat frozen in the grand auditorium, staring at the woman they'd ignored for 6 months. She stood at the podium where moments ago the headmaster had been delivering his annual diversity speech. But now, Margaret Chen, the quiet janitor who cleaned their children's messes, who they'd barely noticed as she emptied their trash bins, was pulling off the gray wig that had hidden her natural hair. The slouch disappeared. The thick glasses came off. "My name," she said, her voice no longer carrying the slight accent she'd affected for months, "is Dr. Margaret Chen-Williams. CEO of Chen Technologies. Forbes 30 Under 30 alumni. MIT graduate. Stanford MBA. And mother to Jasmine Williams, the girl your children tormented until she tried to take her own life." The auditorium erupted. But before we get to that moment, before we understand how one of the most powerful women in tech ended up scrubbing toilets in an elite private school, we need to go back 6 months. But first, if stories about justice and standing up to systemic discrimination move you, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Because what you're about to hear will change how you see every person you pass in the hallway. 6 months earlier, Margaret Chen-Williams sat in a hospital room at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, holding her 16-year-old daughter's hand. Jasmine had taken an entire bottle of anxiety medication. The note she left behind was only 3 sentences. "I can't go back there. They win. I'm sorry, Mom." For 3 days, Margaret hadn't left that hospital room. For 3 days, she'd read and reread the diary Jasmine had hidden under her mattress. The entries painted a picture of systematic cruelty at Whitmore Academy, the elite private school that cost $65,000 a year and promised to nurture tomorrow's leaders. But they hadn't nurtured Jasmine. They'd nearly destroyed her. The diary entries were meticulous. Jasmine had inherited her mother's analytical mind. September 3rd, Madison Hill and her friends accidentally spilled acid on my chemistry project. Mr. Harrison saw it happen. He gave me a C for poor preparation. September 15th, they created an Instagram account called Whitmore's Charity Case. Posted photos of me with captions about how I don't belong. 247 likes from students. Several teachers follow the account. October 2nd, during the diversity assembly, Connor Whitmore, yes, that Whitmore, said loudly that some people only got in because of quotas. Everyone looked at me. Dean Richardson was standing right there. He smiled. Margaret had built a tech empire from nothing. She'd faced discrimination before. But reading her daughter's careful documentation of daily humiliation, that broke something inside her. She'd tried the proper channels first. Meetings with administrators who promised to look into it. Emails to the board that went unanswered. A formal complaint that was dismissed for lack of evidence. The school didn't know who they were dealing with. Margaret's company had developed some of the most sophisticated surveillance and data recovery software in the world. Her government contracts alone were worth billions. But more importantly, she had something they'd never expect, patience and the willingness to get her hands dirty, literally. "You want to do what?" David Williams, Margaret's husband and Jasmine's father, stared at his wife across their kitchen table. Outside, their Bel Air mansion's pool glittered in the California sun. "I'm going undercover," Margaret repeated calmly. "As a janitor. Maggie, we can sue them. We can destroy them financially." "Why this?" Margaret pulled up a presentation on her tablet. "Because lawsuits get settled quietly. Because money doesn't change culture. Because they need to be exposed for what they are, not just punished. And because..." She paused, "I need to know if there's anyone there worth saving." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Margaret would use her maiden name, Chen. She'd alter her appearance, gain weight, wear a wig, adopt a slight accent from her grandmother's Korean dialect. She'd apply for the janitorial position that had just opened at Whitmore. She may have had something to do with the previous janitor winning a surprise lottery that allowed him to retire early. Her company's board wasn't thrilled, but she could run Chen Technologies remotely. She'd built the company, she could certainly manage it from anywhere. 6 months, she told David. Give me 6 months to gather everything we need. What would you do if your child was hurt and the system refused to help? Comment below with your thoughts, and keep watching to see how one mother's dedication to justice exposed an entire network of corruption. The transformation was remarkable. Margaret Chen-Williams, who regularly graced the covers of business magazines, became simply Mrs. Chen, the new night janitor. She hunched her shoulders, wore thick glasses, and spoke in broken English when she spoke at all. The first week, she was genuinely shocked by how invisible she became. Students walked past her like she was furniture. Teachers discussed confidential information while she mopped around them. Parents treated her with a casual dismissiveness that ranged from indifference to contempt. But invisibility was her superpower. She installed micro-cameras in strategic locations, all technically legal, as they were in public spaces and she had access as an employee. Her modified cleaning cart contained sophisticated recording equipment. Every cruel comment, every discriminatory action, every ignored incident of bullying was documented. The evidence she gathered was damning. Dean Richardson regularly made racist jokes in his office, not noticing the janitor emptying his trash. She recorded him telling Coach Anderson, "We need these diversity kids for the numbers, but we both know they water down the brand." Madison Hill, the queen bee who tormented Jasmine, bragged about her father paying for her SAT scores. "Daddy says everyone does it. It's like, basically expected if you're not a diversity admit." But the worst discovery came in week 3. While cleaning the administrative offices, Margaret found a hidden folder on Dean Richardson's computer. He'd foolishly given her his password to update some software on his computer, not knowing she'd founded a tech company. The folder contained spreadsheets tracking students by race, with notes like athletic diversity, academic charity, and most disturbingly, phase-out candidate. Jasmine's name was on the phase-out list. Not everyone at Whitmore was corrupt. Margaret made note of the few bright spots. Ms. Elena Martinez, the young English teacher who stayed after school to tutor struggling students for free, who always thanked Margaret by name and asked about her day. Marcus Thompson, the scholarship student who helped Margaret carry heavy trash bags without being asked, who studied in empty classrooms because his home was too chaotic. Jennifer Park, the guidance counselor who fought for every marginalized student, whose reports about bullying were systematically ignored by administration. These people gave Margaret hope. They were the reason she wouldn't just burn the whole system down, she'd try to save what was worth saving. One evening, Margaret was cleaning the science lab when she overheard Madison Hill crying in the hallway. Her instinct was to keep walking, but something made her stop. "Are you all right?" Margaret asked in her affected accent. Madison looked up, mascara streaming. "My dad, he got arrested. Securities fraud. We're going to lose everything." Margaret handed her a tissue from her cleaning cart. For a moment, Madison was just a scared 17-year-old girl. "Thank you," she whispered. "Everyone needs help sometimes," Margaret replied. Madison nodded and walked away. She never spoke to Margaret again, but she also never joined in when other students mocked the weird janitor lady. There were moments when Margaret almost broke cover. The worst was when she overheard Connor Whitmore and his friends planning to vandalize Marcus Thompson's car, the beat-up Honda he'd worked 3 jobs to afford. "Let's see how the scholarship kid likes sugar in his gas tank," Connor laughed. Margaret had to grip her mop handle so hard her knuckles went white. But instead of confronting them, she did something smarter. She accidentally triggered the fire alarm while cleaning near the alarm box. The evacuation disrupted their plan, and she made sure campus security knew to watch the parking lot that night. Another time, Dean Richardson was berating Jennifer Park for her bleeding heart nonsense about protecting these kids who don't belong here anyway. Maybe, he said, pointing his finger in her face, "You don't belong here either if you can't understand our standards." Margaret was mopping right outside his office. Every fiber of her being wanted to walk in and tell him exactly what she thought of his standards. Instead, she recorded every word. The closest call came when she encountered someone from her real life. She was cleaning the main hallway when tech billionaire Robert Kim walked in for a board meeting. Robert knew Margaret well, they'd collaborated on several projects. He glanced at her, and she saw the flicker of recognition in his eyes. But Margaret kept mopping, hunched over, muttering to herself in Korean. Robert paused, shook his head, and walked on. Later, she'd learn he told his wife he saw someone who looked remarkably like Margaret Chen-Williams working as a janitor. They'd laughed about the absurdity of it. 5 months into her undercover operation, Margaret had enough evidence to destroy Whitmore Academy several times over. But she was waiting for the right moment, the perfect catalyst. It came on a rainy Tuesday in March. Marcus Thompson, the scholarship student who'd always been kind to her, was accused of cheating on his AP physics exam. The evidence? He'd scored too high for someone like him. Margaret watched from the corner, mopping the same spot over and over, as Dean Richardson and 3 board members interrogated Marcus in the main office. The door was open, they wanted other students to see what happened to cheaters. "It's statistically impossible," Richardson said, "for you to have improved this much without help." "I studied," Marcus said quietly. "Ms. Martinez tutored me. I worked every night for 3 months." "Where did you get the answers?" Board member Harrison Whitmore demanded. "I didn't cheat." "People like you always have excuses," Richardson sneered. That's when Marcus's mother arrived. Sharon Thompson worked 3 jobs to keep their family afloat after Marcus's father died in Afghanistan. She'd taken time off she couldn't afford to defend her son. "My son doesn't lie," she said firmly. Harrison Whitmore laughed. Actually laughed. "Ma'am, with all due respect, your son's performance is suspicious. Perhaps Whitmore isn't the right fit. There are public schools that might be more appropriate." Margaret watched Sharon Thompson's face crumble. She watched Marcus lower his head in defeat. She watched the system she documented for 5 months destroy another family. That was enough. That night, Margaret Chen-Williams made a call to her assistant. "Schedule it," she said. "The diversity celebration. Make sure everyone important is there. Tell them there's going to be a special announcement about a major donation." Which brings us back to that Thursday afternoon in October. The auditorium was packed for the diversity celebration, an annual event where Whitmore Academy congratulated itself on its commitment to inclusion. Margaret had worked her janitorial shift the night before, ensuring everything was perfect. She'd also ensured that her presentation was loaded onto the main system, ready to deploy at her command. She sat in the back row, in her janitor's uniform, gray wig in place, watching as Dean Richardson took the podium. "Whitmore Academy has always been a beacon of excellence and inclusion," he began. "We believe in merit, in achievement, in maintaining the highest standards while opening our doors to deserving students of all backgrounds." That's when Margaret stood up. "Excuse me," she called out, her accented voice carrying across the auditorium. Richardson looked annoyed. "Ma'am, this is a private event." "I work here," Margaret said, walking toward the stage. 6 months. I clean your toilets. I mop your floors. I empty your trash. And I have something to say." Security started moving toward her, but she held up a small remote. "Before you remove me, you should know that with one push of this button, everything I've documented in the last 6 months will be simultaneously released to the Los Angeles Times, CNN, the Department of Education, and the ACLU." The room froze. That's when she began removing her disguise. The wig. The glasses. The posture straightened. "My name is Dr. Margaret Chen-Williams. If you're still watching, you know something big is about to happen. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss our next video about standing up to power. The presentation that followed was devastating in its thoroughness. Video after video played on the massive screen. Dean Richardson's racist comments. The phase-out list. Teachers ignoring bullying. The systematic discrimination disguised as maintaining standards. This is a legal recording. Harrison Whitmore shouted. You can't use this. Actually, Margaret said calmly, every recording was made in public spaces where there's no expectation of privacy, or in situations where criminal activity was being discussed, which is admissible. I should know, my company develops surveillance technology for the Department of Defense. She clicked to the next slide, financial records. Let's talk about the Whitmore Foundation Scholarship Fund, shall we? The one that claims to support underprivileged students but actually funnels money to a Caribbean account controlled by 3 board members. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Or perhaps we should discuss the grade manipulation system, where certain students' transcripts are enhanced for the right price. Parents began pulling out their phones, recording everything. But the real crown jewel, Margaret continued, is this recording from last Tuesday, when you tried to expel Marcus Thompson for the crime of being intelligent while black. She played the entire interrogation. Sharon Thompson, sitting in the audience, began to cry. You almost killed my daughter, Margaret said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. The auditorium was so quiet you could hear hearts beating. Jasmine Williams tried to take her own life because of what happens in these halls. And when I came to you for help, you told me she was too sensitive for Whitmore's rigorous environment. Dean Richardson tried to maintain control. This is a misunderstanding. These recordings are taken out of context. Mrs. Chen, or Williams, whatever your name is, you obtained employment under false pretenses. That's fraud. Is it? Margaret asked. I filled out the application truthfully. Margaret Chen is my legal name. I have a social security card. I never lied about my qualifications, you never asked if I had any degrees. You never asked about my background. You saw a middle-aged Asian woman applying for a janitorial position and made assumptions. This is entrapment. Harrison Whitmore declared. No, this is consequences, Margaret replied. She clicked to another slide showing a legal document. This is a cease and desist order from the Department of Education. They received my evidence package this morning. You're under federal investigation for discrimination, fraud, and embezzlement. The room erupted. Parents demanding answers. Teachers trying to leave. Board members huddling with their phones, presumably calling lawyers. But Margaret wasn't done. However, she said, and the room quieted slightly. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here for reform. Margaret clicked to her final slide. It was a photo of Jasmine, taken before Whitmore, smiling and confident. My daughter is recovering. She's at a different school now, one that actually values diversity instead of just pretending to. She's thriving. But there are students here, right now, who are suffering like she did. She looked directly at Marcus Thompson. Students who deserve better. Then she looked at Ms. Martinez and Jennifer Park. And there are educators here who genuinely care, who've been fighting this system from within. So here's my offer, Margaret said. Full cooperation with the federal investigation. Immediate resignation of all administrators and board members involved in discrimination or fraud. Implementation of a new oversight board that includes parent representatives, community members, and yes, a janitor or 2. Full scholarships for all students who were on your phase-out list. And a formal, public apology to every student and family you've wronged. That's extortion. Richardson sputtered. No, that's mercy, Margaret replied. The alternative is I release everything to the media tonight, let the FBI raid your homes tomorrow, and watch this institution burn to the ground. Your choice. She pulled out her phone and set a timer. You have 5 minutes to decide. And just so we're clear, my husband David Williams, you might know him as the district attorney, is waiting for my call. The next 5 minutes were chaos. Board members huddled in heated discussion. Parents demanded immediate answers. Some teachers tried to leave but found that Margaret's security team, yes, she'd hired her own security for this event, had locked the doors. "This is kidnapping," someone shouted. "The doors will open in 4 minutes," Margaret said calmly. "Or sooner, if you agree to my terms." Harrison Whitmore stepped forward, his face red with rage. "You think you've won? You think you can just waltz in here and destroy everything we've built?" "What you built," Margaret said, "was built on the suffering of children. So yes, I think I can destroy it. The question is whether anything will be left to rebuild." Dean Richardson's phone rang. He answered, his face going pale. He whispered urgently to the board members. "That was our lawyer," he announced. "The FBI is already at the school's financial office." The timer showed 1 minute left. Madison Hill suddenly stood up in the audience. "Mrs. Chen," she called out. Margaret turned to look at the girl who had tormented her daughter. "I'm sorry," Madison said, her voice shaking. "I'm sorry for what I did to Jasmine. I was horrible. And you were kind to me when my dad got arrested, even though you knew who I was, didn't you?" Margaret nodded slightly. "I think you should burn it all down," Madison continued, shocking everyone, including her mother. "This place is toxic. It makes us toxic. Start over." One by one, students began standing. Marcus Thompson. Jennifer Park. Even some parents. "Agree to her terms," a father called out. "Or I'm pulling my donation and my 3 kids." The timer hit 0. Harrison Whitmore stepped forward. "We agree to your terms." "All of them?" Margaret asked. "All of them. Say it specifically. I want to hear you say you'll resign." Whitmore's jaw clenched. "I will resign from the board of Whitmore Academy." "And the rest?" One by one, each board member and administrator involved agreed to resign. It was either that or face criminal prosecution. Margaret nodded. "Good. My lawyers will be in touch. Oh, and one more thing." She turned to Marcus Thompson. "Your scholarship has been upgraded to a full ride through graduate school, courtesy of Chen Technologies. You earned that physics grade, and everyone here knows it." Sharon Thompson broke down sobbing, hugging her son. "Ms. Martinez, Ms. Park," Margaret continued, "I'll be recommending you both for the interim administration. This school needs leaders who actually care about all students." As security finally opened the doors and people began flooding out, many in tears, others on phones with lawyers, Margaret made her way through the crowd. Madison Hill intercepted her at the door. "Is Jasmine okay? Really okay?" Margaret studied the girl for a moment. "She's healing. It takes time. Could you tell her I'm sorry? That I know it doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry." "Tell her yourself," Margaret said. "She'll be at the restorative justice meeting next month. All the students who were harmed will have a chance to speak, and those who did the harming will have to listen. Really listen." 1 year later, Whitmore Academy looked very different. The imposing oil paintings of old white men had been replaced with diverse artwork from students and alumni. The trophy cases that once held only athletic awards now showcased academic achievements, community service, and acts of courage. Ms. Elena Martinez was the new principal. Jennifer Park headed the newly formed Student Wellness Center. The janitorial staff received full benefits and their children could attend tuition-free, a policy Margaret had insisted on. Marcus Thompson was at MIT, thriving in their physics program. Madison Hill was at a public school, by choice, volunteering with an anti-bullying organization. Dean Richardson was serving 3 to 5 years for embezzlement. Harrison Whitmore's family name had been removed from the school, it was now simply the Academy. And Margaret Chen-Williams? She was back to running her company, but she served on the new board of directors. She attended every meeting, and she made sure to always thank the janitorial staff by name. Jasmine Williams gave the graduation speech that year. She stood at the same podium where her mother had exposed the truth and spoke about resilience, justice, and the power of one person standing up to systemic oppression. "My mother taught me something important," Jasmine said, looking out at the crowd. "She taught me that sometimes you have to get your hands dirty to clean up the mess. Sometimes you have to become invisible to see the truth. And sometimes, you have to be willing to burn it all down so something better can grow." She paused, finding her mother's eyes in the crowd. "But most importantly, she taught me that everyone, from CEOs to janitors, deserves dignity, respect, and justice. The question is, what are you willing to do to ensure they get it?" The standing ovation lasted 10 minutes. This story, while fictional, reflects real struggles that students and families face in educational institutions every day. Discrimination, bullying, and systemic inequality aren't just plot devices, they're lived experiences for millions. What would you have done in Margaret's position? How do we balance justice with mercy? And most importantly, how do we ensure that every child, regardless of their background, gets the education and respect they deserve? If this story moved you, please subscribe to our channel and ring that notification bell. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that standing up to power is possible, that justice can prevail, and that sometimes, the janitor might just be the most powerful person in the room. Comment below, have you ever witnessed someone in a service position being disrespected? What did you do about it? Remember, every person you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Be kind. Stand up to injustice. And never underestimate anyone, especially the quiet ones cleaning up the mess. End. Thank you for watching. Until next time, keep fighting for justice, keep standing up for what's right, and keep believing that change is possible.